Has winter left a depressing moss green hue on your skin? Do you long for a sun-kissed look without the sun damage? Are you a fan of the Insta-Loompa chic look?
Okay, let's try something else then.
Yes, I'm going to talk about bronzers. First of all, I'd like to talk to you about textures of bronzers. They come in all shapes and sizes as usual. You have your cream bronzers, your liquid bronzers, and then your powder bronzers. I would say that cream and liquids are better for textured skin because usually powders can get caught on some textures on the skin, even if you buff them really well, and the pigment can get really stuck on any kind of unevenness you may have. Whereas in creams, they can blend into your foundation and you don't feel that kind of problem. You can basically powder over it. If you have very oily skin and you find it very uncomfortable to wear several layers of creams, a foundation, concealer, and then a cream bronzer, then skip and go on to the powder bronzers. The thing that I find most difficult, and I don't see anybody talking about it, is color matching. I find that most bronzers can be a little bit orangey on me, and I have quite neutral skin tone, so I have to be quite careful with the bronzers I choose. But what I would say is that a rule of thumb is to have as a reference the color that you already have when you have a bit of a suntan. And that should be the color that you should go for. I have a good reference with me because I have my driving arm. You know, no matter how much SPF I apply to my arm, it's always exposed to the sun. The silver lining is that it's always a bit darker and I can have it as a reference color. So think of that when you're going to look for a color. Yes, bronzers are meant to be warmer and to warm up your complexion. They're not supposed to create a shadow underneath your bone structure, which would be a little bit cooler or at least neutral. But on some people, for instance me, most bronzers can go a little bit too orange for my liking. So that is something to think about when you're looking for a bronzer. The other thing is the color payoff. It comes with good and bad. If you have a very light hand naturally, you will love a high-end bronzer with a lot of color payoff. But if you're a bit more insecure, you're afraid of going overboard, maybe you should go for a bronzer with a little bit less pigment that you can build up, but that always starts by applying just a little bit of pigment at the time. The places to apply the product is where the sun would naturally hit. So along your forehead, for instance, which is a very high place of your skin, usually it gets really suntanned, across your nose, on the sides of the nose, I get really tanned there, and then on the tops of the cheeks, where you would apply basically your highlighter, that's a good place to apply. And then a little bit on my chin. I don't go too overboard on my chin. And those are the areas that basically would get a little bit more sun-kissed as time would go by. And that is something that has to do with your specific features. So again, remember how you get tanned, how you used to get tanned, and try to replicate that on your face. So application, as I said, first and foremost, you should have a light hand with the product. So for instance, if I'm applying a powder bronzer, I use kind of a brush like this, which is quite fluffy. It doesn't pick up too much product, and I just pack on a little bit onto the bristles, tap off the excess, and then when I apply it, I pick the brush from the handle, the bottom of the handle, and I just swipe it like this. First of all, holding the handle like this will give you a little bit more of a lighter hand, and then when I'm applying, I'm just gently stroking the face so that there isn't too much product buildup. And I really try to get the product caught on the areas that would be sun-kissed. So I go down so that the product is kind of trapped on the highest points of my cheeks. I try not to go overboard for two reasons. One, I don't really fancy looking too unnatural. And second, if you apply too much product on this area here, you'll start to notice too much of a contrast basically on your skin, and you will try to compensate by going over that area with a little bit more pigment, and then you will notice that there is a contrast between your jawbone and your neck, and then you're going to paint your neck, and that will make you get your clothes dirty. That's just my 5 cents on it, so I try not to go overboard and really pinpoint where I want the color to go. When I have barely anything left on my brush, that's when I go down the rest of my face to kind of even everything out without taking the chance of having too much and having to overcompensate on my neck. A couple of tricks I like to use. If I'm using a cream, I would apply it after foundation before powder. If I'm using powder bronzer, I'm going to apply it over my mattifying powder or setting powder. And what I like to do is, after applying the bronzer, I like to go over that area with a clean or what's left on my brush from applying the foundation or the powder, and kind of buff the edges so that everything is blended seamlessly. Of course, you can apply highlight and contour on your face when wearing a bronzer. You can just go with a highlighter, for instance. Take a little, if I can open it, take a little bit of the highlighter and just dab it on those specific high points. That will create kind of a subtle glow on your skin that looks quite beautiful. And I like to go a little bit down the bridge of the nose without going too overboard, but I like to keep it really restrained so that it doesn't look too much on the skin, but still makes the skin look a little bit more dewy and natural. Another good trick I like to use is taking a kind of a red toned blusher like this one by Max Factor and really apply it to the areas that are most raised. So the tops of the cheeks and a little bit down the nose, just a tad bit of that can give that illusion of a sunburnt, slightly sunburned skin that is kind of cute sometimes. And if you want to really fake that on your skin, you can with a little bit of blusher over the bronzer, and again blending really well. There are plenty of shimmering bronzers out there in the market, but to be honest, I would use mostly matte bronzers just because they give a more natural finish. If you want to use something like this bronzer from Kiko, or more shimmery bronzer, this is the Too Faced Pink Leopard bronzer. I use these usually as kind of a bronze topper, so a highlight which is a little bit more bronzy and darker just on those specific areas instead of applying all over the face. For a night out, go all over, cover yourself in shimmer, do you. Now I'm going to talk about my suggestions, and I have a lot of great products, but let me just say that, as I previously said, the main thing is that it matches your skin and your skin tone and the kind of bronze you're going for. So some of these products may suit you, some of these products may not, some of these products don't suit me. They are just very good products in themselves that I have here to suggest to you, and that I hope that in some way may cater to you. When it comes to cream bronzers, I'm so sorry, this has been very hyped on YouTube, and then trends come and go and they don't talk about it anymore, but I still find this is a brilliant product. This is Chanel Soleil Tan. It comes in a huge pot. It's so difficult to use for traveling, and if you have a bad brush, its bristles can get caught. The hairs can get caught inside the cream, which is a little annoying because I have to take my tweezers and keep plucking the bronzer. But the bronzer itself, although it looks quite orangey on the pan, I don't know, I think it's sheer enough that it lets my skin undertones show through, so it doesn't end up being too orangey on me, and I really like it because it's cream and I have a lot of texture on my skin. So I like that it melts on my foundation and it looks a little bit more seamless. Another option is the Dior Skin New Tan BB Cream. And these are basically liquid bronzers, and you can take just a little bit with your fingers, tap it onto those areas and then buff it onto your foundation. But these are kind of a two-in-one. You can also use them to darken a little bit your foundation. Let's say if you only have one foundation that you've bought in the winter, your skin is starting to look a little bit darker, so you need another foundation. No, you don't. You can darken it up with a little bit of this, as long as this matches your undertones. Let's go into the powder bronzers, which are the most used. One classic bronzer is the Hoola bronzer by Benefit. Yes, I got caught in the aisle of doom at Sephora. They have a mini. I really wanted to try it, and I think that 35 euros for a product is just. But this is the bronzer itself. It's a very soft powder, and it is quite neutral on its undertones. So it suits me, it may suit those of you who have cooler undertones and don't want to go too orangey. So I really like this one. A classic is the Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer. I bought the big one in Deep, which is this one, and I still have my little mini here, which is in medium. And as you can see, this is a lot cooler. So I can use this just like the Hoola as my contour and also as my bronzer. It looks good on me either way. Another high-end product that has been really raved, and I can understand why, is the Beached Bronzer by Urban Decay. The packaging is really cute. They have two colors. It's just a bit too orange for me, but as I said, it can suit you. And the texture of it, the finish of it is really good. With all of these three bronzers, I must say that you need to have a lighter hand, because except for the Hoola, which is quite manageable, the other ones have a lot of pigment to them. So keep that in mind. So let's talk about some more affordable options. The Body Shop Honey Bronzer is a classic. Again, it was very raved on YouTube, and then trends come and go. It's still really good. Unfortunately, they have about 5 shades where I went to check them out, and none of them suited me. They're a bit more on the orangey peachy side, so they're a bit too warm for me, but I can use them as, for instance, a blusher, or maybe when my skin changes color, I can use them. Despite that, really good formula. Another great formula is the Bourjois Matte Illusion Bronzing Powder. This one is number 21, which is the fair one. It's so light, it's beautiful. It has a bit of SPF, but it's not too high, so it doesn't count. Again, this is more on the peachy side of things, but I really think this is a beautiful formula. So if it suits your skin tone, go for it. And another one, which is very insanely cheap, is the Natural Bronzer by Rimmel. And this is a waterproof bronzer with an SPF of 15. Again, that's not actually an SPF in my way of seeing things. And the color is really nice. It's quite light. This is number 22, Sun Bronze. The downside of Rimmel bronzers, at least here in Portugal, is that you cannot test them out. They're sealed in the supermarket aisle, so you have to take a leap of faith if you really want one. They're the most affordable at around 10 euros, I'd say. None of these products looks patchy. They blend really well on the skin, which is something I personally look for in a bronzer. So yeah, these were my recommendations, tips and tricks, ways of application that I prefer. I hope this has helped some of you, and I'll see you on the next one. Subscribe. Bye!